You hear people dancing, hear people singing. It's just so amazing.
A clinic in Toronto offered a safe cultural space to get vaccines to some of the communities at highest risk of getting COVID-19. Plus,
where is the promised peace?
It's Juneteenth today, which marks the end of slavery in the United States. We'll have more on the call for equality and justice here at home. And
I thought I had to shake the rust off a little bit, but I felt good right off the bat.
it hasn't been an easy journey for Olympic hopefuls, and the road to the Olympic Games in Tokyo for some Canadian swimmers just got more real.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Good evening, I'm Maribel Tarouk. We'll get to the latest on the province's vaccine rollout in a minute, but first we want to start with an update on a story we've been reporting on this week. A 24-year-old man has been arrested following an investigation into an aggravated assault that happened on Toronto Island at Hanlan's Point.
He's been charged with aggravated assault. He's been set a court date for July 26 to answer to these charges. Even though we have one person arrested and charged, this is still an ongoing, open, active investigation.
The victim, 24-year-old David Gomez, shared his story on social media after the incident on June 5th. He said he was walking with his roommate at night when they were circled by a group of individuals who started hurling homophobic slurs. That's when police say a woman grabbed the victim and the suspects punched and kicked him. Police are still looking for two women in their 20s who were there that night. They'd like to speak to them as witnesses in this investigation. A powwow was held at the University of Toronto today. Part celebration, part vaccination clinic, providing a culturally safe space to help protect high-risk communities from COVID-19. As CBC's Jessica Ng reports, it is part of a wider effort to get more Indigenous people in Toronto vaccinated.
This vaccine clinic at Varsity Stadium has its own beat, bringing Métis families like the Woodcocks for their first doses.
I was really nervous, and then you come here, you hear people dancing, hear people singing. It's just so amazing.
Cheryl Miller got her second dose here. Her Chippewa family also came along to experience this gathering during powwow season.
We don't live in Rama, and so we try and give the kids as much exposure as we can to the culture.
Even Mayor John Tory stopped by.
We can make sure that our Indigenous communities, which at the present time are maybe only half vaccinated, can get vaccinated.
While 75% of all Torontonians have their first dose. Dr. Janet Smiley was one of Canada's first Métis doctors. She says many of the 95,000 Indigenous community members in Toronto live in overcrowded homes.
Here in Toronto, just under 90% of First Nations, Inuit and Métis people live below the low-income cutoff,
contributing to higher risk and rates of COVID-19. But when it comes to fighting the virus,
we have a lot of reasons to distrust non-Indigenous medicines and healthcare services and hospitals.
I think some of the hesitancy comes from, the historical medical experiments that were, tested on Indigenous people for, hundreds of years.
What's the next step to get more Indigenous peoples vaccinated and more people vaccinated overall with that confidence in it?
It's really important that, the Indigenous health organizations and Indigenous organizations lead these processes, and we need to be able to provide that.
The NDP Indigenous and Treaty Relations critic says governments also need to collect more data on Indigenous communities to learn how to best deliver those services.
There's a lot of recommendations within the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report that are related strictly to health. A lot of them can fall within the vein of cultural safety or maybe the lack of.
To provide more with a safe space to learn about the vaccines and get them.
I just think it's fantastic that we can get together as a people and push towards getting everybody healthier and safer.
Indigenous vaccine clinics will continue every Tuesday at the Adoge Minnow Nissewanong space on Vaughan Road. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
The province is reporting 355 new COVID cases today and 13 more deaths. On a brighter note, yesterday, Ontario delivered more than 213,000 vaccine doses. That's the most ever in a single day. More than 20% of Ontarians 18 and older have been fully vaccinated. That's part of the criteria that the province has laid out for advancing into phase 2 of its reopening plan. And in the city of Toronto, Mayor John Tory announced a new vaccination milestone as well. More than 75% of adults in Toronto have received their first dose, while more than 25% are fully vaccinated. Ontario hospital workers held a virtual province-wide protest today demanding Bill 124 be repealed. It was introduced in 2019 and caps public sector wage increases at an average of 1% annually for the next 3 years.
At a time when inflation was 3.4 in April and 3.6 in May, so that would mean a real cut to purchasing power of our members' salaries at a time when they've given so much.
And all we're asking is that we be able to bargain wage increases that mean that we will not have our incomes cut to inflation, and then we can bargain the mental supports and other supports that we need in order to work safely.
Ontario opposition party leaders also spoke. The virtual rally was organized by the unions that represent over 70,000 hospital workers. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, Ontario Council of Hospital Unions, and SEIU Healthcare will begin provincial contract negotiations on Monday. In a statement to CBC News, the province disputes the 1% cap, saying, quote, Ontario's public sector employees will still be able to receive salary increases for seniority, performance, or increased qualifications as they do currently. It's a historic day in the United States. For the first time, Juneteenth is being observed as a national holiday. The day celebrates the end of slavery in the U.S. Chris Reyes takes us to events across the country.
A mural representing a dream, the artwork unveiled in Galveston, Texas, marking the first Juneteenth national holiday in the United States. At the unveiling, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who lobbied long and hard for the legislation.
We signed that bill. I was filled. What I hope this gift is, that we will now do this unafraid deep dive into a history that rarely is spoken of.
In another part of Texas, 94-year-old Opal Lee led a march. She's considered the grandmother of the movement to declare Juneteenth a holiday. Everywhere in the U.S., from Milwaukee to New York City to Tulsa, Oklahoma, celebrations, rallies, education campaigns, each one spreading awareness about what Juneteenth means. This gathering in Galveston, especially poignant. It was in this very city on June 19, 1865, that the last enslaved black people were set free, the very day commemorated by Juneteenth.
We understand that the Emancipation Proclamation was written, but it took 2 years for the final slaves to be free, and that's something that everyone should celebrate.
In Wisconsin, the Juneteenth flag has been flying over the state capitol building since Friday. The flag full of symbolism. Most notable, its red, white, and blue colors, a reminder that Juneteenth is an American story. In a celebration in Harlem, New York, that reminder is a much-needed one for some in the crowd.
You know, it's new for me, and I was 80 on Monday. It's sad, because it should be taught in schools.
On social media, many sounded off the Juneteenth celebrations shouldn't distract from the anti-racist work that they say must continue. Congresswoman Cori Bush tweeted, "On this Juneteenth, remember that millions of incarcerated people are still in bondage. Our work is Black liberation in its totality." Congresswoman Jackson Lee echoed the same sentiment while taking a moment to savor an accomplishment decades in the making.
Emancipation, liberation, and freedom. God bless all of you.
Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
They're not listening to the neighbors who know the whole plan stinks.
In Toronto's Leslieville neighborhood today, dozens gathered protesting Metrolinx's plan for the Ontario line in their community. They're demanding Metrolinx put the trains below ground, like a subway, rather than using existing above-ground GO train tracks. The group says it would negatively affect residents' health and safety. The protest was held at Jimmy Simpson Park, an example, protesters say, of much-needed green space that needs to be protected.
I'm a resident here, and I've been just noticing how poorly Metrolinx is planning this transit and how they've been ignoring community concerns.
People are very upset because Metrolinx won't even consider burying the line. When you look at this beautiful park, all these trees will be gone. And honestly, they keep changing the plan.
Metrolinx spokesperson Anne-Marie Aikens said the Ontario line will not expand into Jimmy Simpson Park. She says there's enough land where the existing GO line is for the added lines. She adds the new trains will be electric and therefore quieter. Construction isn't set to begin until next year, and she adds that Metrolinx will continue to consult with communities during the planning process. It was a hot one today, and to help people stay cool, Toronto opened another 46 outdoor pools. This is in addition to the 10 city pools that opened last weekend. But as you can expect, if you're hoping to go for a dip, things are a little different this time around. Capacity continues to be reduced to 25%, and 45-minute sessions must be reserved on the city's website. If anyone had a chance to dip into a pool, Sophia, today, it would have been very refreshing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll wait for my invite for tomorrow. It'll also be very hot. We hit 30 today, so it was a great time if you got the chance to dip into a pool. Currently around 25. We had some morning storms this morning. A few of you could have an evening round as well. Right now, a few power showers moving through the Hamilton, London, Windsor area. In fact, many of you could see some light showers over the next hour or two. Things will clear into the overnight period there. We drop down to 16, and then a really nice, calm, and pleasant Father's Day tomorrow. Happy early Father's Day to all the dads. We also welcome in summer at 11:31 tomorrow night. So big day, and temperatures will really be a carbon copy of what you saw temperature-wise today, forecast into the mid-20s. Feeling, though, into the high 30s for some of you. Feeling 37 in Windsor, feeling 34 in Hamilton. So anybody who's susceptible to that kind of humidity, it'll be kind of a tough day. That heat and humidity also brings along a little extra instability. So if dad is in, say, Windsor and is planning that Father's Day barbecue, have him not do it too late, because a pretty potent line of storms could come through after the dinner hour, anywhere until sort of the midnight hour. And then Monday will be sort of a wet, rainy, and unsettled day for everyone in behind those storms for that first full day of summer. But coming up, I'll tell you why Tuesday will feel way more like fall than summer in the long range.
What a roller coaster. Okay, we'll see you in a few, Sophia.
Always.
Yeah. Canadian Olympic hopefuls have hit the road to Tokyo. 185 swimmers are taking to the pool over the next 5 days for trials at the Toronto Pan Am Sports Centre. But as Dale Manukduk reports, the journey just to get here has been a challenge.
One stroke away. Look at this. 51.40, Brittany. Under the cut, a Canadian record.
Not bad for 18-year-old Joshua Liendo's first competitive race since before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I thought I'd have to shake the rust off a little bit, but I felt good right off the bat.
National swim coach John Atkinson says it's a testament to how resilient Canadian athletes are.
When you see somebody like Josh, and there'll be others here as well that do great things, stand up, you get on the block, it's the same block, it's the same 50-meter lane, it's the same turn.
However, there are some major differences, like the amount of competition. Only 185 swimmers are racing in the trials compared to over 700 for the 2016 Rio Games. Those who get selected will have less than a month to prepare, unlike the normal 12 to 14 weeks. And today at the Toronto Pan Am Sports Centre, no fans.
We know that our family and friends and the rest of Canada are cheering for us virtually.
Here we go with Moss to see what her time is. 58.13.
2016 Olympic bronze medalist Kylie Moss finished 300th off her own Canadian record in the women's 100-meter backstroke.
I can't wait to get to Tokyo and race the rest of the world.
Olympic hopefuls have been able to train with the support of the province, which granted training exemptions for high-performance athletes. But for those in the trenches, training just isn't the same.
It's an objective sport with a time, so you can tell in your training how you're doing, but it's completely different when you get to a race and there's pressure, nerves, excitement, and such.
You have what we call feel for the water. And if you're not in the water and you don't have that daily touch on the water, you kind of lose that capacity of what it feels like.
The Canadian national swim team is coming off the 2016 Olympics, where they won 6 medals, and the 2019 World Championships, where they hit the podium 8 times.
We don't talk about medals. We talk about what you need to do in the process of improvement. And given COVID and given the lack of competition, it's really hard to predict where everybody's at.
Olympic swim trials wrap up on Wednesday. The final roster will feature roughly 25 swimmers, about 15 women and 10 men. Dale Manukdug, CBC News, Toronto.
And Dale has given us some end-of-day results that came in from the last hour. 21-year-old world champion Margaret McNeil of London placed first in the women's 100-meter butterfly. Joshua Liendo, who you saw set that Canadian record earlier in the day, he also makes it through. And Kylie Moss just set a new Canadian record herself in the 100-meter backstroke. McNeil and Moss have already been nominated to the team, so congratulations to them. Well, protesters silently gathered at Toronto's Yonge Dundas Square this afternoon, taking up space to draw attention to international conflict in Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Who demand the immediate and unconditional release of Armenian prisoners of war that have been held they have been illegally held hostage for over 7 months.
Organizers are calling on the Canadian government to step in and demand that Armenian prisoners of war be let go. Some demonstrators sat with their eyes and mouths covered and with their hands tied behind their backs. They say Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed to a ceasefire in November and that Azerbaijan has continued to hold captive over 200 prisoners of war. India's consulate in Toronto is demanding teachers stop giving lessons about the ongoing farmers' protests in India. In a letter to the Doug Ford government, the Consulate General of India claimed what elementary and high school students in Peel, Toronto, and York region are learning about the protests could disrupt peaceful relations between Indian communities in Ontario. Protests began last year over India's new agricultural laws led by Sikh farmers. And some teachers have covered discussions around this in their classrooms. While some parents have told CBC News they worry the lessons may be too critical of the Indian government, some teachers say they feel responsible to unpack the politics and have open conversations with their students.
Even if I hadn't brought it up, it would have come up in the classroom because I have students whose relatives are in the protests. This is not just a distant connection. It's not just about identity. It's about our students' lived experiences.
The Peel School Board and province both say they support students learning about the protests. We'll have more ahead. Stay with us. A dog from Toronto is shining on a big stage. Striker is a 5-year-old Samoyed who won the working group at this year's Westminster Dog Show. We caught up with one of his owners after the beautiful dog's big win.
Certainly Striker would be tough
striking, there's no doubt. Sammy.
There we go. Striker's smiling tonight.
It's pretty amazing. It's the best way to make it make sense to a lot of people who don't know a lot about dog shows is it's the same as getting into the finals of Wimbledon or the French Open or a gold medal at the Olympics. It's pretty up there in terms of our sport. It's the pinnacle. If you win there, you've won. Like it's a really big deal for him to have won the group. And a Canadian dog.
Striker, as expected, lives up to the hype to take the working group title.
He's one of a kind. Like he really is physically beautiful. He's a wonderful representative of the Samoyed breed. He's got that beautiful smile. His coat is marvelous. He's just a lot of coat and in great condition. But his character and his personality is he knows he's special and he knows he's the center of attention. I think he knows the applause is for him when he gets it. But he's just an amazing dog. He's a character. He likes to sit on your lap and when you're watching TV, or he's he's just got it all. He's physically an athlete and he's got the work ethic and the head space to do it. But at the end of the day, he's happy laying on his head on your knee when you're watching TV or just hanging out. Like he's a really cool dog is probably the best way to describe him.
I'm still smiling from striker the Samoyed, Sophia.
Oh, good for him. What an athlete.
Yes,
and,
really.
Good thing he didn't have the crazy heat to deal with like we have here. The dog days of summer are certainly here for us right now. Do you like that? Yeah, you
Really
worked on
good.
that for a little while. Yeah. I pulled this up since we last talked, actually. 36, it felt like today in Niagara Falls. Certainly, the dog days of summer are here. Those dogs, stay out of the vehicles, folks. Remember, it gets really, really, really hot for them in there. Lots of summer-like talk over the next little while for Dad tomorrow. It will feel like 20-ish when he wakes up tomorrow to celebrate Father's Day. First day of summer, first full day of summer is Monday, but we welcome in summer again tomorrow night at 11:31. And boy, is it gonna feel that way. Feeling like 37 in Windsor tomorrow, feeling like 34 in Hamilton. This is a very hot, very humid day, but hey, we made it. The summer solstice, longest day of the year tomorrow, and as we go into Monday as well. So that'll be nice. We earned these bragging rights, I think, with the roller coaster that we've talked about. Along with all this summer-like heat comes some summer-like storms and some instability, especially later into the evening and overnight hours. For those of you in southwestern Ontario, London, Hamilton could see some power showers into the overnight hours as well, but line of storms maybe for those of you in Windsor and in London. And then for Monday, it's kind of a rainy, unsettled, wet, and potentially stormy day for everyone across the board, but it'll be hot, humid, and summer-like still. And then I don't know what happens on Tuesday. I'll tell you about the temperatures in a minute. But first, we got to talk about the rainfall, because this could be potentially heavy, especially for those of you in parts of eastern Ontario. Kingston could see upwards of 30 millimeters of rain, 25 to 30 for those of you in the eastern end of the GTA. The farmers have really been waiting for this rain, though. We improved a little bit from our drought status, but it has still been very, very dry. So this is the good soaking that we need. And then have a look at Tuesday. I have no words. We will be barely struggling to get to 20. It will feel more September or October-like. Downright chilly. We'll have sunshine for Wednesday, but we really don't recover until Thursday or Friday when we get back to seasonal. Tuesday's about 5 to 8 degrees below seasonal, and we're really not talking about extended heat until the end of June, Marivelle. So topsy-turvy continues.
Got the whole rest of summer to talk about that heat too then. Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for watching. Before we go, though, we want to show you an art installation on Harbourfront. Plastic people made out of recycled plastics removed from Canadian shorelines. It's put together by a group called Corona Canada Plastic Beachgoers. Have a great night, everyone.